right then, I think we are good to go. So, welcome to the first live webinar of the Funded Cyber Support Programme for Accountants. I'm Michael Kleiman. I'm going to be the host for the event, and I'll also be the one, if you do register, that goes out to your firm and provides the cyber support we're offering. Just to make you aware, this is being recorded, and all the slides and recordings as well will be sent out to you via email after this. So no need to rush and take notes. Also, thank you for your time. I can imagine right now you'd be very stressed getting stuff sorted for the end of tax submissions. And yeah, just really appreciate taking your time to come to this webinar, where we're going to talk about the free cyber support that we can offer your firm to help you prepare against the most common cyber attacks. Now, what this is going to cover is basically introductions to myself, first of all, to Lugo, the company that's hosting this program, and a little bit about our special guests as well. After that, we're going to have a brief look at some of these cyber threats that are facing Scottish firms, and how Cyber Essentials can help you protect against these threats, and what support the Funded Cyber Support Programme can actually give you. And then that's going to be for the first half an hour. Excuse me. At the end of that, we'll have a 15-minute panel with our special guest I'll introduce in a moment. And then for the last 15 minutes, we're going to have a Q&A. Now, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to type them into the chat, and then we will address them at the end during that last 15 minutes of the hour. Okay, so settle in. Thank you very much, and without further ado, we'll get going. So, who am I, and who are Lugo, and why should you actually pay attention and listen to us on a Wednesday morning? So first off, a bit about me. I'm a cybersecurity consultant working with Lugo. A bit about my background. I've got a first class honours in ethical hacking. Yes, it's a real degree. And it's very interesting, very technical. But I've been a consultant for around about 2 years-ish with SBRC, and I'm working with Lugo. I also had experience as a fraud investigator in Washington, DC, that's in America. I've also worked in some technical projects. One of my most proudest was a digital forensics project. I worked in conjunction with my uni, Aberdeen Uni, and the UK government as well. I also have a background in education, which kind of helps sum up what my skills are. I make the technical stuff understandable. So that's kind of why I'm suited for this role. I'm going to take all this technical jargon and mumbo jumbo that you get in guidance and things you need to sort for Cyber Essentials, and I make it in plain English. So that means you're able to understand what your IT team is going to implement. A little bit about Lugo. They are a IT and support service that support businesses, mainly accountants across Scotland. And they've been doing so for just under 2 decades. And they have been spending this time making effective and secure IT systems for accountants. Now, why are Lugo so perfectly supported to do this project, to run this project? Basically, that comes from the fact that they care a lot. They put in some research that actually got this funding from the Scottish Government, and they were the only ones that have actually been given funding by the Scottish Government to support accountants. And this is the first time this has ever happened. Not only does it show that they care about their client base, but it shows they're caring about the sector entirely as well. So that's the main reason I'm even employed here to get going with this project. Enough about me and Lugo. I'm going to chat about our special guests, and we'll introduce them one at a time. First off, we have Liz Smith, who is the Business Director, Development Director at Lugo, and was responsible for the research I just mentioned. Liz, would you say hello?
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. It's so lovely to be here and to see you. And I hope you get a lot out of today's session. So yeah, I'm the Business Development Director here at Lugo, and I'm make sure that you're getting the most out of your IT. So hope you have a great session, and I'll catch up with you later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Up next, we have David Menzies, Director of Practice from ICAS. Hi there, David. Would you like to say hello, please?
Hi, Michael. Thanks very much. Yes, great to see so many people on this webinar this morning, and many familiar names amongst our members on the webinar this morning. So, as you say, Michael, I'm Director of Practice at ICAS. I've got a background in IT, and I used to run, when I was in practice, I used to run our firm's network. So we had about 65, 70 users So I've had a general interest in IT and cybersecurity for a while. So delighted to be here and look forward to the chat later on.
Thank you very much, David, for that. And last but not least, we have Jeremy Clarke, who is the Assistant Director of Practice at ICAS. Please say hello, Jeremy.
Hi, Michael. Hi, everybody. I spend a lot of time up and down the country talking to people in practice, and quite often those conversations are about IT. I have absolutely no IT background other than, like David, having run it in my own practice. I'm unfortunately old enough to remember the time before computers were in accountancy practices. So I've come on that journey, as I'm sure many folk on the webinar have as well, since about 1985. So yes. Delighted to be here, and hopefully we'll get some useful things out of today.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. As you can see, between the four of us, we are perfectly suited to provide you with some accurate advice on how you can best prepare yourself and your company cybersecurity-wise, and make sure that your firm is protected against those cyber threats. Now, don't grin and bear, because we have a small bit of audience participation here. Cybersecurity, as you can see on the screen. I want you guys to just put a thumbs up for yes or a thumbs down for no in the reactions in Teams. But can you tell me, are you confident that you actually know what cybersecurity is? This isn't a mock or a jest to anyone. It's a genuine question that I do get up from a lot of people. So I just want to try and gauge the audience, see where roughly everyone is in terms of how confident they know what cybersecurity is. So just put a thumbs up or a for yes and a thumbs down for no if you don't know what cybersecurity is.
We don't have a thumbs down option. Shall we go for a clap if we don't know?
Go for a clap.
Is that
yeah.
okay, Michael?
That's
Cool.
perfect.
Thank you.
Grand. Okay, fantastic. So the main thing I want to get across for this entire webinar is that cybersecurity is just risk management. Now, that's kind of a vague term for some people, but it's very much a business case. Whenever you run a business, there are risks that are involved, and cybersecurity, if you're running a business in the modern age, is one of those risks. Now, when it comes to good risk management, it's all about knowing what the risks are and being prepared for them. In our case, that's the internet. The internet is a wonderful tool that connects billions around the globe, but it wasn't built securely. It just wasn't considered as one of those features when it was first built. Maybe in the next version it will, but not for a while. And because it is insecure, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are taking care of our clients' data and our customers' data and protecting that data. And I'll go through how we do that later on. But don't worry, you don't have to do that on your own. We're here to help. You don't have to struggle on your own. We're offering this free support that can help you protect your business and account for the risk that is the cyber threat. Now, we'll have a look at these threats right now, and we're going to touch on a few headlines that have been across in the newspapers, and we're also going to touch on some statistics as well. So, are cyber attacks even a relevant threat these days? Yes, is the answer. First headline here is from Kieran Martin, who is the ex-CEO of the NCSC. That's the National Centre for Cybersecurity. Sorry, National Cybersecurity Centre. If you don't know what that is, think of the NSA, but for the UK. And he's mentioned that around 1 in 2 firms in Scotland are vulnerable to the cyber threat. This shows that the problem isn't just focused in the United Kingdom, but more Scotland specifically. And it's affecting more and more firms every day, with cyber threats like phishing and data theft being the most prominent. Now, it's affecting all areas of industry, not just the private sector, but the public sector as well. And the Scottish Government has seen the need to address this issue, especially in the financial sector. So projects such as this to increase the quality of cybersecurity in accountancy firms will help aim to do that by helping you guys get cyber essentials. Now, headlines are all well and good, but let's actually look at the numbers, the statistics. So I'm going to show you some stats from a report from the UK government that basically shows all the breaches that have happened for a select number of businesses. So far, it's getting the data from around 1,500 UK businesses, just under 500 UK charities, and just under 400 educational institutions. So, 4 in 10 businesses in the UK and roughly 26% of charities reported having a cybersecurity breach or an attack in the last 12 months. Now, cyber threats are significantly affecting business because of this. If there's a 4 in 10 chance of something, it's pretty well regarded as not a small issue. This is a large issue. And all those attacks, phishing was the most prominent one, and that affected 62% of those businesses that were hit by an attack. Now, keep that in mind, that phishing is the most common attack, okay? And we'll touch on that later. Now, only 4% of businesses that were reported there, and roughly only 4% of charities actually are adhering to cyber essentials. If people haven't heard of cyber essentials before, don't worry. By the end of this, I guarantee you'll be able to spout all its great joys. But a quick little rundown. Basically, it's a security certification that proves your company is protected against the most common cyber threats. Now, if you remember back one slide ago, phishing is the most common cyber threat. If you have cyber essentials, you are more protected against the most common cyber threat you're bound to face. So it's kind of shocking that only 4% of the businesses are actually taking on board cyber essentials. Excuse me. Now, only 3 in 10 businesses and roughly 27% of charities are actually considering cybersecurity when it comes to their business plans. Now, businesses aren't even considering cybersecurity as a real threat, and that is where the danger lies, underestimating the impact of how this can affect your business. And we'll cover on in a moment how it can affect your business. But just keep that stat in mind, that a very small number of people actually considering cybersecurity as something they need to do. It's always considered as something they should do later on. What we're trying to do is change that ethos to make you realize that cybersecurity is something you need to keep in mind when running a business, not just for one decision here and a decision over there, okay? So half of these businesses and roughly 44% of charities have experienced the cyber attack more than once a month. So that's from the number that actually experienced the attack in the last 12 months. That shows that it's not just something that happens once a year and that's it done. It's consistent, okay? It's a consistent threat that we have to address. And of these cases, a third of businesses take a day or more to recover. Now, just take a quick moment and think about what kind of damage that could do to your firm if you can't work for a full day. What would your clients do? How would they react if you couldn't carry out the business for them on that day? What do you do in that scenario? Do you let them know immediately? Do you try and catch it and fix it as quick as possible? Do you need to let people know? Are there any government entities you need to inform about this attack? Those are a lot of scary questions sometimes, but don't worry, we are here to help. The Funded Cyber Support Program can arm you with the answers to these questions and make sure you're prepared for the inevitability of a cyber attack. Now, let's take a look at some of these threats in detail, okay? And don't worry, we're going to try and avoid as much technical jargon as possible. So, phishing. It's basically creating an email with the intention of someone committing a malicious action. Now, what malicious action could that be? That could be downloading a virus, sharing credentials. So if someone sends your fake email from Facebook saying, oh, you need to log in, a friend sent a notification, you log in with your credentials, someone's just stolen your Facebook login. Or client critical information. So that's the reason that someone would actually want to send a phishing email. You'll find the most common types of phishing emails sitting in your spam inbox if you've got your email configured correctly. And they're not much of a threat. But where the real threat lies, and the threat that catches most people out, is with spear phishing. Okay. Unlike general phishing, which targets a lot of targets at once, spear phishing targets one person, in general, one person. And they do an incredible amount of research to gather all the info they can about that one person. They look up their Facebook, their Twitter, Instagram, your colleagues, where you went to university, your friends, your family, the school your kids go to. You look at every single bit of information they can find to help build an attack strategy that's most likely to get you to fall for an attack. For example, if they find out say for example, your kids are really excited to go away on a school trip, you could pretend to take an email from the school, use their header from the email as well, send it to you saying, oh, the deposit didn't clear for our last school trip payment. Just fill in the details here just to make sure it all goes through. And instantly someone has your account details and they have knowledge of you as well, which is doubly dangerous. Now, impersonation attacks are also quite a serious threat as well. Why would they do this? For the intention of stealing customer information, simple monetary gain, or even blackmail if they want more information down the line. And how would they actually do this? Again, I mentioned this previously, a little bit with spear phishing. These two kind of bleed into each other. And they could use fake email addresses, fake phone numbers to impersonate a client or a colleague, a friend, or even a CEO of the company. Something a bit more technical, malware simply stands for malicious software. Any type of bad software, so something that does something, that's very specific, something that is created with malicious intent. One of the most common types is an eavesdropping bit of malware, which sits on your network and listens to every communication you do. You can think of this as a really bad mailman who, instead of passing his letters on to the next person, the recipient, he can look at them, he can fill them in with false information, he can steal the information himself, and he can put bad information in that, so that means the other person gets attacked too. Now, these big three over here, these are the ones you need to consider. According to the NCSC, these are the three most common cyber attacks that you're likely to encounter at your firm: phishing, impersonation, and malware. Now, I want you to think for a moment. Are you prepared to defend against these kind of attacks? Okay. Can you give me a thumbs up for yes, or a little clap for no? Okay. We're just open and honest here. There's no judgment. We're just genuinely gauging, and it's all about accepting that if you're not aware of how to deal with these cyber attacks, that's fine. But it's all about how we can arm you with the knowledge that means you can prepare for them. Okay, so keep in mind those big three. Are you really able to be prepared for those attacks if any of those happen today? But it's not just those big three you have to worry about. There's also ransomware. Now, ransomware prevents you from accessing information via encryption. Basically, it locks a bit of information off from you, and they won't give you the password unless you pay a fine, normally paid in Bitcoin, which is like digital money. Now, there's no real best defense against this apart from regularly taking backups, because if you pay the ransom, there is no guarantee they're going to give you the data back. They can keep bleeding you for information and bleeding you for cash. And the only real way to deal with them is to just wipe the system and reboot from when you last took a backup. We also have accidental loss. It does happen. We are human. We do, make mistakes. UK GDPR and Data Protection Acts from 2018 do they basically hold the people that take care of information and data and make sure that we're accountable for our actions. How we store information, how we delete our information after an appropriate period of time, and how we manage our information. If stored incorrectly, lost, or destroyed, companies can be fined up to the tens of millions. And something a bit more technical, we have DDoS. Brownie points for everyone that knows what that is, but it basically stands for distributed denial of service. Very techy word, but very simple premise. Basically, attacks from several computers to take down one service. Think of it plainly as, say, for example, I had 17 phones, and what I do is I call your company non-stop to block out your phone lines. That's a denial of service. That's stopping a service from multiple different attack points. You could also do it from a more technical angle. Say if you want to get 16 computers and spam all the email accounts at your company, so that means you can't actually access your email address. Very simple to do, but very effective with reducing the amount of work that your company can do. Now, close with the threats, let's look at the impact of these threats now. Damaged reputation is one of the most major ones. A cyber attack, if successful, can have severe repercussions on a company's reputation. And gaining back the trust of that client can nearly be impossible sometimes. In extreme cases, it can even lead to companies leaving you and pursuing legal action against you for improperly managing their data. Monetary losses. This can be directly from the cyber attack. Say the attacker siphons funds from your accounts, steals money from your company or your client, or even in some cases, adding a fake employee to your payroll system and then getting paid at the end of the month to cash a paycheck. It does happen. But you can also get indirect costs of a cyber attack, mainly having to pay staff when their systems are down and they're not able to work, but you still need to pay them for that. Losing annual revenue as some customers may leave, and also the cost of getting tech back up and running. So getting your systems back to the place where they're actually to continue work from before the attack. And that's going to take a lot of time, depending on how prepared you are, or depending on when the last time you took a backup was. Okay? You'll be losing crucial time when you could be making money or doing business for your clients. And some clients may leave, and some clients, well, you get less likely to actually get new clients as well, especially if the news of the cyber attack goes public and they've seen that you've lost their clients' data. They're not going to be happy with that, and they will tend to go for another vendor that has not been in a recent cyber attack. And obviously the clients you do have may be a bit miffed the fact that their data is being exposed, and also as a run-on effect, as you're trying to build up your systems again, they may actually be disgruntled with the fact that you can't actually do any current work for them until you've come back up and running. So those are some big effects of a cyber attack that is successful. Here's a simple loss of earnings example, just to contextualize a bit more. Say you have 25 accountants with one tech specialist, and it's an £80 billable for these accountants. IT system goes down for 4 hours. So that could be any kind of attack. Say, for example, a phishing attack goes right, and you get an access to an admin account. So they have full privileges on every server. And because you don't have logs, so you can't track what that account has done in the past, then you have to go back and just reset all the account information on all the previous computers that you have. Basically meaning you can't work for 4 hours. There's only one IT guy. And if the 25 employees for the 4 hours of downtime, it's only half a day at 80 quid a pop. It's roughly 8 grand. Now, I know that looks like I just pulled it out of midair. According to the NCSC, micro and small businesses are roughly losing 8 grand as the result of a cyber attack. And it's even a more significant number for medium to large businesses. Now, the aftermath of a cyber attack and the incident tends to be where the costs are. So you have to really make an effort to be prepared for those to limit the cost in the future. And one of the ways you can do that is with Cyber Essentials. Now, when you compare the initial cost of Cyber Essentials, which is £300 per year, versus the potential losses from a cyber attack ranging from 8 to 13 grand, it's a simple decision to decide which cost you're going to have to pay. And it is a decision. Statistically, you are likely to encounter a cyber attack, and you could be potentially losing thousands and thousands of pounds. So you really need to be aware of the situation that you're in, and you need to be willing to make a decision on which payment you're eventually going to choose. Now, Cyber Essentials is obviously the best solution for countering a cyber attack. Basically, it puts a lock on your digital front door. We're not turning your place into Fort Knox. We're not getting laser traps in like Mission Impossible. We're making sure you're protected and have the most basic protection against the most common cyber attacks. Because attackers most likely aren't looking to target your company directly. They're looking to target easy companies. And if your company is easy to attack, it's a zero-sum game. They'll do it instantly. However, if you've got the defenses in place to make it annoying or difficult for an attacker to get through it, then they're just going to move on to someone else who doesn't have those basic protections in place. Only a small number of firms in Scotland actually have Cyber Essentials in place. So it's really, really important that you try and build yourself on the lander. One, it will set you aside from other companies. And two, it will help protect you, which is more important for you and your clients. And yes, it does cost £300, but however, that is a drop in the bucket when compared with the actual potential losses of a cyber threat. And from the statistics we've seen, that is a very, very real amount of money you could lose. 5 technical controls that are used to protect the company. I'm going to explain these in plain English as much as I can. Firewalls and gateways. Think of these as the bodyguards of your network. They stop the bad stuff from coming in and let the good stuff in only. So they identify and prevent unauthorized access and disable and block any unauthenticated connections. Unauthenticated basically means not allowed. Okay. And so that's just basically protecting what comes in and out of your network. Then you have configuration. Configuration is how you build stuff. So attackers will often scan your network and look for insecure configurations, default passwords, old systems that aren't in use anymore, things that are kind of like maintenance, house chores, but for a technical analyst. And when an attacker finds a weakness or a vulnerability, they can look online for a bit of software that downloads that's suited for that specific vulnerability. So you can find attacks for specific vulnerabilities. It's a massive database online where you can download that kind of stuff and try it. It's mainly used for pen testing, as in penetration testing of networks, as like for testing, but it can be used for attackers as well. And there are a multitude of viruses you can download from very nefarious places. And cyber attackers will use that against you. So building things securely and making sure you don't have any weak spots is really important for secure configuration. User access control, and that's basically making sure that not everyone has an admin account and you're not doing your daily emails in an admin account, because if someone gains access to that, they've owned your company. That's it. They can do whatever they like. They can disable firewalls. They can install a bunch of viruses on separate computers that you'll never even notice. So it's really important to secure which user has which privileges and making sure those privileges are managed. Okay. Malware protection, very basic. Antivirus software, making sure it's up to date, making sure you're scanning for the latest viruses on a daily basis. We've got these things called signatures. It's like a unique identifier, fingerprint, for every different virus, and that gets updated every day with your antivirus, and you need to make sure you're scanning that frequently. And it identifies a bunch of programs that are bad. We also have sandboxing that comes as part of that. Basically taking a bit of software if you want to use it, if you're not sure how to use it. So you put it in a sandbox environment, which is basically cut off from the rest of the network. And it's sat there and you kind of test it to see if it's bad or not. That's basically it. And the most important, arguably, is patch management. That is just basic updates. Making sure you have auto update turned on. So that means your system is automatically updating. Say if a big update happens, you should really get that done within 14 days to be compliant with Cyber Essentials. So there are a lot of kind of controls in place to make sure that you are protecting yourself from the main attacks. And why bother getting Cyber Essentials apart from being protected from the most common cyber threats out there, statistically? Protect yourself and your clients. It's our responsibility to make sure that we're taking care of their information and giving them the confidence to know that their information is safe. As we've seen from the statistics, it's only a matter of time before someone tries to attack your firm. So the Cyber Essentials certification will help defend against those incoming threats. Also, Cyber Essentials is required for the majority of government contracts. And so if you want to tender for new business opportunities with the government, you must have Cyber Essentials. You also get added to this public directory of all the companies in the UK that have Cyber Essentials. So if prospective clients are looking around and shopping around for new accountants, they'll look at that directory and prioritize people who take cybersecurity seriously and are taking the security of the client seriously as well. And they're going to know that from your Cyber Essentials cert. And you're also eligible for free cyber insurance as part of Cyber Essentials when you sign up as well. But the main thing is that peace of mind. You know you are confident enough to withstand the most common cyber threats. Now, this is a major one that really annoys some people. IT is not cybersecurity, okay? IT is responsible for keeping the company running, keeping it turning on, making sure you can do business. Cybersecurity keeps the company safe, okay? It's important to have that distinction. People just assume because they've got an IT team that they're covering their cybersecurity as well. They may be doing aspects, but do not take that as gospel. You need to be sure. And the only way to be sure is to pursue Cyber Essentials to make sure you're protected against those threats. And please take advantage of our support that we're having here. It's only eligible for 1 year, so it's really, really important to sign up sooner rather than later, okay? As we're mentioning, this free support gives you the chance to greatly increase the likelihood of you passing the Cyber Essentials assessment, because I'll be able to go down to your company, help talk you through the ICAS Cyber Essentials questionnaire. There's a lot of technical lingo there that can throw some people off and can put people off as well. So I'm there to help you process and understand what the IT team will be putting in place. Also be able to hold educational workshops as well, not just training your IT people, because in all likelihood, cyber attackers are not going to target them because they know what they're doing usually. We'll target people who don't have much technical background, who are weaker traditionally to these threats. HR, training, reception, lower level junior people that aren't trained on that stuff yet, we'll focus on those aspects, speaking from an attacker's perspective, obviously. But training those people is really essential to make sure they can handle a cyber threat. And we'll also provide a plan of action with your IT team, just to make sure they know exactly what they need to check off to ensure they're going to pass the Cyber Essentials assessment. What can my firm actually do? If you're sitting there, if you're in charge of your firm, these are the things you need to be doing. If you're someone at a firm, these are the things you need to neg your boss to do, okay? So prepare, know what weaknesses are on your IT estate. Do you know who to look for? Who do you tell when a cyber attack happens? Do you need more training? Do your staff know what to do when a bit of ransomware pops up on their network? Some people will actually just go off to lunch and hope it goes away by the time they get back. It does happen. It sounds silly, but it does, because people panic. But what we need to do is we need to arm these people with the appropriate training to make sure they know what to do in those scenarios that are very stressful, and let them know that we need to turn the blame away from that person, and it's on a company-wide scale that we need to accept and move on, kind of broach this environment of trust to make sure that they know they're protected and we can support them if an attack does happen. But the main thing you can do, of course, is get Cyber Essentials. And more importantly, take on this funded cyber support program for accountants, as we can help with all aspects of this recovery strategy to prepare you for incoming cyber attacks. Before I finish up my lengthy presentation, thanks for sticking with it, by the way. The main ethos we're trying to foster here is building stuff to be secure by design. We don't want to make cybersecurity an afterthought. We want to make it integrated with everything we do. Whenever we bring a new start into the company, we make sure they know what to do when a cyber attack happens. They're trained on phishing. They have a secure password policy. Their account privileges aren't set to admin by default. We need to make cybersecurity essential to our company and our businesses. Right, that's me done waffling along. Thanks for listening to my presentation. We're going to do a panel now with our guest speakers. And if you see over there, there's a QR code. You can scan that and it will take you to our website, where you can sign up for the register for the free cyber support that we're offering and learn a bit more about the project. Okay, so up next, we're going to have a little chat with our panel there. Are the panel up and running? Can you hear us?
We are
Hi,
indeed.
Michael.
I hope.
Hiya.
Hi, Michael. Yeah.
Oh, give me just a moment. There you go. So, first question is for the lovely Jeremy. What are your thoughts on the current level of cybersecurity in the accountancy sector?
I think it's a real mixed bag, to be honest, Michael. Some people do have it covered, and it's reasonably well up their list, because they realise the benefit of making sure they don't get an attack. But it's interesting that you used the word afterthought, because I think there is quite a bit of complacency around firms. They probably think they're okay, but they're maybe not sure. And I think that comes through in the survey that you guys have done. There's a "I'm all right, Jack" kind of attitude, and that might not actually be the case. It's interesting being here at ICAS, because first of all, people do tell us what happens, and we've heard some horror stories over the last few years. But equally, regularly, we just see things popping into our email box, which our system catches and flags as a potential phish or whatever, and they come from firms. So clearly, firms are getting targeted and hacked on a regular basis. So I think my overall feeling is there's probably a fair bit of work to be done. A fair bit of improvement to be had, and this is a perfect way of just getting that ball rolling.
Thank you for that, Jeremy. Yeah, there's definitely instances of where attackers will often also pretend to be accountancy firms, like you mentioned there. And it's all about protecting against those possibilities that are likely to occur. Thank you for that, Jeremy. Liz, a little question for you. Do you think there is enough awareness of these critical cyber risks in the Scottish accountancy sector?
Thanks, Michael. So we did a bit of research last year, and it was quite insightful. We interviewed quite a number of firms across the country, and the results that came back from that were that 8 out of 10 people thought that they were quite aware of the risks that are out there, and they also rated themselves 8 out of 10 on how secure they are as well, which I feel is quite worrying statistics, to be fair. I think obviously the more that you know about cyber, the more you worry, and the more that you know that you don't know what you don't know as well. So I would say that I am quite worried about the complacency that I feel as if is out there amongst the kind of the SME community, just because it's been such a difficult year or couple of years now for businesses. And we've been struggling to kind of keep our businesses running. So there has been this complacency about cybersecurity. We have seen the number of firms that are Cyber Essentials certified drop. So there used to be more than there are now, and that has just been put on the back burner. And we know that attackers are taking advantage of that. And everybody will have seen the usual messages that are coming into their text message and stuff about vaccines and ways to kind of get things faster than waiting the normal way to get them, which are all just malicious ways of trying to get your information or your money out of you. So yeah, I'm quite worried just about the level of complacency that's out there. So I think it's perfect timing that this project is kicking off now. We've got the funding for a year to be able to support accountancy firms through Cyber Essentials. And it's not difficult to get through Cyber Essentials. It is, as you say, it's 5 basic controls to get through. But it is it just sets you apart from the other. It makes you not one of those low-hanging fruit. So I think that's really where we need to concentrate our efforts at the moment, is just getting accountancy firms and then in turn your clients through Cyber Essentials, because you'll find that your clients, if they are tendering for public contracts, then it's just a prerequisite that they just can't tender if they don't have Cyber Essentials, even Cyber Essentials Plus, which is the next level up. So that's where you go through the same controls, but you're then audited on that side of it as well. Or something like ISO 27001 as well. So it's a great opportunity to take advantage of this in-person support to support you through this certification, because it's worth its weight in gold when it comes to your own cybersecurity.
Absolutely, Liz. I like the point that you touched on there, the fact that 80% of people are thinking that they are secure, but there's this element of, you said awareness, yes, but perhaps not recognizing the impact of these cyber attacks and realizing the threats that they might be facing. So they're aware to an extent, but it's the outer layer of, oh, is this thing actually secure in my network? Am I actually updating stuff? And that's where we're here to help, to make sure that you guys are dotting those I's and crossing those T's. Next question is up for David. What kind of damaging effects could these cyber attacks have on practice throughout Scotland? We've touched on a few of them there, but can you think of any cases specifically?
Yeah, Michael, I think that's really interesting. You obviously touched on some of that during your presentation earlier on there, and I think the figures you picked up there were about 6,500 to 13,000 per cost. Actually, to me, that sounds very, very light.
Yeah.
I think it's substantially more than that. And some of the figures that I've seen quoted in some specific research around accountancy firms and such like is probably a more realistic cost is probably somewhere between 65,000 and 125,000 per cyber attack. So I think there's direct costs and direct impact, but there's an awful lot of below the surface or hidden or less visible costs that are there as well. So you're absolutely right. You mentioned during your discussion there, there's a lot of direct costs in terms of the IT recovery costs. There might be some improvement costs that you need to incur afterwards. There are costs around PR, crisis management. There's the direct costs of any ransom payments, although I think we would probably all agree that paying the ransom is probably not the right thing to do. So that maybe isn't really a direct cost there. But I think there's a lot of indirect costs that are not readily visible. So there's a lot of legal or regulatory impact costs that will be there. I'll perhaps touch on some of that slightly further as well. Undoubtedly, you will have increased insurance premiums, both in terms of PII and general business costs. You've undoubtedly got your lost revenue costs. You mentioned some of that cost around the lost time that you have, the potential impact on future business. You've talked a bit there around procurement of government contracts. While that might not be relevant to many practices in Scotland, actually you'd be surprised how much that impact will be there, because it will be impacting on supply chains. So some of your clients will be part of a supply chain into Scottish government. I mean, there's a large amount of contracting costs in Scotland and in the UK is public authority led. So you'd be surprised how far down the supply chain that goes. And perhaps by not having your cyber essentials, that will mean that your clients will then have to start looking for other accountants. So there may not be that direct linkage that you're seeing there at the moment, but there is that linkage there as well. Some of the things that we've seen, perhaps also less obvious, is regaining HMRC access as agents. That's a massive problem. And I think, Jeremy, you might be able to talk about that in a bit more detail as well. But the hoops and the hurdles and the time that it takes to regain access to HMRC systems is massive. And that's a really significant cost there as well. And I think the last thing, so those are general sort of economic financial costs. Reputational costs you've talked about there in the past, not only in terms of clients, but I think also in terms of your staff. I think many staff in practices will be saying, well, actually, you know what, if you're not prepared to put in the work and you're prepared to risk your business in this way, are you the sort of employer that I want to work for? And so there's that there, but also in terms of future staff joining you as well, I would certainly be questioning those sorts of risks that you're willing to take for your business. And fundamentally, how secure is my employment in those situations as well. And then I think finally there's that legal and regulatory costs. I think we quite often pigeonhole, as you say, cybersecurity in that technology space, but actually more often than not it will involve a data breach. So you're immediately into UK GDPR issues, reporting breaches to the Information Commissioner's Office, potential for regulatory fines there. And perhaps the other regulatory area that's not really thought about is one of the major fundamental principles underpinning the Accountants Code of Ethics is confidentiality. And clearly, if you have a cyber breach, you potentially have a breach of confidentiality. And therefore, I would suggest that you're certainly opening yourself up to disciplinary action or investigation from the likes of ICAS or any of the other accountancy bodies for your breach of your fundamental principles there. And again, that in itself comes with additional costs and just frankly hassle that you don't really want out of that. So I think there's lots to think about there. I think there was a Deloitte survey recently that suggested that actually only 5% of the cost, if you like, of a cyber security breach is from the above the surface, the known costs, if you like, and 90% of the impact is likely to be below the surface or hidden where you wouldn't normally expect that to be. So, I think it is something that needs serious consideration.
Absolutely.
Michael, can I pick up on the HMRC thing? Because that's the piece that would really make me lose sleep at night. And we have come across it several times now. It's interesting, Michael, that you mentioned, people leaving their PCs unattended, unlocked at lunchtime, which is, from what we hear from HMRC, one of the most common ways that they get hacked. But the way this works is if HMRC see unusual activity on your account, your agent account, whether that be sort of returns coming in that they're not, asking for too many repayments, which is one of the things that hackers are going for. What they will do is unilaterally and unannounced cut your agent access, so you will not get in, which means you can't do business, basically. And it will take not hours, not days, probably weeks, sometimes months to get that restored. The longest I've seen somebody out of business, if you like, was hitting 3 months. So, you know, do your sum at 4 hours. That's way short of what it is. The hoops that you jump, because once you're unsecure as far as HMRC are concerned, is they don't want to hear from you, and they will really put you through the ringer to get you back in. And then there's the time it takes, actually. If you've got 300 clients, it takes a while. If you've got 3,000 clients, it takes forever to get them back into your agent account. So that really is quite scary, and we have seen it several times.
It sounds like a brutal process getting that back up and running, and that's just from a very simple attack that could occur on your network as well. It's very simple to do.
And in fact, what they'll do is they'll cut you off, so you'll suddenly find that you can't get into the system, and then the letter will come through about 2 weeks later telling you what's happened. So you might not even know that they have cut you off. That's what's happened. You'll just know you can't get in. So it is really an inconvenience, to say the least.
Absolutely. And that's a significant impact to the business of day-to-day running, not being able to have access to that HMRC access.
Yeah.
Liz, do we have time for one more question, or do we need to push on to the Q&A?
We've only got a couple of questions in so far, so yeah, feel free.
Cool. One more question for you all then before we move on to the Q&A section. What final piece of advice would you give to a Scottish firm operating in Scotland, obviously, to help protect themselves from the cybersecurity threats that we've discussed today? Let's hear from Liz first.
So take up Michael's offer for the support that's available. But I think one of the main things is to educate staff. So I think it's really important, like you were saying during your presentation, Michael, that everybody in the firm has a good understanding of cybersecurity. They understand the kind of the do's and don'ts, and to ask questions, and don't click on the link if you're not sure. A lot of accountancy firms out there make use of Microsoft. So they work on a Microsoft system. So make sure that you're working with your IT support provider to make the most of all of the technical elements that are within there. Yeah. So there's lots of features within Microsoft that come as standard from a security perspective. Things such as, there's an area called Intune, which will be managed by your IT support, and they will be able to manage things like conditional access, so that, for example, if you're inside the office environment, if you're on the corporate network, on the domain, then you don't need to put in things like your multi-factor authentication codes. You're in a secure environment, so you can use it. But if it was somebody that was out with that environment, they would have to log in with MFA, two-factor authentication. Make sure that that's switched on. Two-factor authentication should be switched on wherever it's available for you. So you'll have seen communications coming out from people like Xero that you just can't get into the software now unless you have it switched on. And it should really be like that for any bit of software, and especially your email system, because it's such, we do IT support for a number of accountancy firms across Scotland, and having your email secure is one of the best ways of securing just access, so that nobody else can get into your email. So switching on MFA, I think, makes you something like 99% more secure than not having it on. It's really easy to do. It's a very small inconvenience to your day to have to put in a code now and again. And if you're in a secure office environment, then you don't even need to put in that code. So there's really basic things that you can do. You know, Cyber Essentials makes sure that not everybody's logging in with their admin account on a day-to-day basis, so that if you had malicious software got on there, then it wouldn't be able to run because you just wouldn't be logged in with admin credentials. So there's really basic things that you can do, and it's just about educating staff on the basic kind of do's and don'ts, and always to ask if you're not sure. And like Michael said, if something goes wrong, report it as quickly as you can. Get off the internet, change your password, do all the things that the cyber training tells you to do. But yeah, just do something, just don't do nothing.
A very fair point there. Thank you, Liz. David, your thoughts on a piece of advice that firms could take on board to make sure they're more secure against these cyber threats?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the comment you made, Liz, on the research that you carried out previously around the complacency of firms. I think, you know, the big message, I think, to me is, you know, don't be complacent. You do have to take this threat really seriously. Don't think it won't be you. Don't think just because you're you know, a small practice somewhere relatively remotely in Scotland, you know, you're not likely to be targeted. Actually, you're likely to be targeted. You know, and I think more and more we're seeing actually these are not large scale phishing events, if you like. There is a much more directly targeted approach to that. So I say, do take that threat seriously. It's not a case of you know, if this will happen to you. I think it's really a case of when this will happen to you. So make sure you're dealing with this up front. I think the other thing is have that conversation with your clients as well, because actually they could be the really weak piece in your defence. So you need to be making sure that they're on top of this as well. And I think the third piece, which perhaps seems a little bit counterintuitive to this, given that we're talking about cyber and technology and all the rest of it, is actually just make sure that you've got paper copies of really critical business documents in hard copy. You know, we can all talk about having backups and having them in different systems and all the rest of it, but actually there is nothing better than having a secure piece of critical documentation in hard copy, because you have no idea just how far this, you know, cybersecurity threat could be, and really just could completely lock you down out your system. So if you don't have something that you can go back to on a secure basis to even get to that stage, even just simple things like, you know, how have you got your key employees' phone numbers? You know, you need to be able to have all that to hand, and having it stored on purely electronic basis is a risk that you just can't be taken. So those would be my three things.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, David. Good point on the hard copies of stuff, because if you have everything on your system and your system goes down, what are you going to do? Having those action plans as well, your policies of like what to do when a cyber attack happens on paper would also be probably good, a good shout as well. And Jeremy, any final thoughts to add on that?
Yeah, there's a brilliant cartoon that I saw a couple of years ago that was just that, you know, your business recovery plans on the server and you can't get onto the server. Great. I've got just two final thoughts. The first one is think like a hacker, because you need to understand the value of the information that the average accountancy firm holds. It's immense. You know, you've got a lot of personal data there, but you've also got a lot of financial data. Put the two of them together and it is a hacker's goldmine. So as David says, it really isn't a question of when somebody's going to have a go at you, or sorry, if, it's when. You know, you are very, very attractive to a hacker. And the second thing is, you know, accountants moan all the time about clients who are DIY enthusiasts. You know, I can do my own bookkeeping, I can do my own accounts, I can do this, I can do that. And, you know, I think accountants are quite prone at being enthusiastic amateurs in terms of their IT in particular, but especially cybersecurity. And I think it's important, the point you made earlier, Michael, that IT is not, no, does not equal cybersecurity. The two are quite separate. You might be perfectly capable of looking after your own IT needs in terms of basics, but I very much doubt if you're capable of looking after your cybersecurity needs. The most enthusiastic DIY amateur is unlikely to be anywhere near as good as a really bad professional hacker. So I think that's a point that is worth thinking about. So yeah, just cybersecurity is it's an open goal here. It's where else are you going to get somebody, the government, to pay for you to sort out something that's really important to you? It doesn't happen very often. So I would thoroughly encourage everybody just to do this, and it does give you that extra wee advantage in other people, because you might be doing it all. You might already have all the 5 things ticked, but actually this gives you the shiny badge that tells other people that you've done it too. And that's good for your clients, but it's also puts the hackers off, because, as you say, if you see a burglar alarm outside a house and the one next door doesn't have it, you'll try the one next door first.
Yeah, 100%. Good point in the public directory as well. Hackers will often look at that to determine if it's worth attacking a company too. So all these factors are coming into play, and it just makes sense to pursue that. Thank you all to our fantastic guest speakers for their due diligence there and staying in and offering us some really good perspective on the cybersecurity aspect that affects accountancy firms. Liz, do we have time for those questions?
Yeah, sure. So from Jim, he's just asking, will Lugo be advising their existing customer base on the Cyber Essential package, or do we require to contact you to register an interest? Thank you for your question, Jim. So the support page that's up on the screen at the moment, Funded Cyber Support, if you go in there, register your interest. We do IT support for a lot of accountancy firms. So by default, we don't think that you're in the programme unless you register for it, Jim. So yeah, please get your registration in. Daniel was just asking, what benefit can Lugo or the Funded Cyber Support provide to accountants who work within large companies who will likely already have good cybersecurity in place? I've enjoyed this refresher on cybersecurity. Thank you for your question, Daniel. So as you'll see on this page, the support is open for firms that are SMEs. So that's what's been specified by the government. So that's anything from 10 to 250 employees. So if you're within that bracket, then yes, we can support you through that. And if not, I'm afraid there's no support available from the government at this time for the larger companies.
Liz, sorry.
Yes,
Liz,
when you go.
sorry, can I just come in on that?
Of course.
I think the last time I had a look at the public register, there was maybe one accountancy firm in Scotland or two,
Yeah,
accountancy
I can
firms.
definitely count them on one hand, David.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think even although decent-sized accountancy firms may well have their cybersecurity sorted out, actually they're not demonstrating that, and therefore actually there probably is even value for those firms that do have good cybersecurity going through this program as well. So I would say, don't just assume that because you're in a decent-sized firm that this isn't for you. Have that conversation with Michael or Liz about whether it's appropriate for you or not.
Thanks, David. David's just asking, please can you clarify what the government is covering and what needs paid for? Do you want to cover that one, Michael, or do you want me to?
Of course, yeah, I'm happy to take that. So we cover the actual me visiting the company as well. So we go down and we have a discussion about what your system is currently operating on. What is the bulk of your business? How are you interacting with them? What systems do you have in place? After that, I'll walk you through the IASB questionnaire for Cyber Essentials, which offers technical advice on how you can implement those 5 technical controls we discussed earlier. Now, that walkthrough can sometimes be a bit overly technical, so my job is to help make that in plain English and make it highly digestible for you, so you understand what your IT team would be implementing. At which point, I would provide them with an IT plan on the things they actually need to physically execute at your company. After which point, you could either get your internal IT team to execute that plan, or you could look to Lugo for that if you want to incur that inside the business. But that's the actual implementation aspect of that is not covered by the scheme. It's only the support to get you through the process and get you actually on the ball with it. later on down the line, I'm happy to offer to come down there and offer free presentations as well on how to actually train your staff against phishing attacks, how to react when a bit of ransomware pops up on your screen, and basically preparing them for the eventuality of a cyber attack. And I'm happy to do that to all members of the company. The more, the better. So it means we get the most coverage as well. But we also want to target those client managers too, so we can have this kind of chain of goodness occurring. So that means they can take on this advice and hand it to their clients as well. That way we get the most impact out of the experience for everyone involved. And there'll also be check-ins down the line. I'll come back down to the company, physically check out how you're getting on with implementing these IT solutions. And if things are looking good and we're on track, I'll help you get booked on for the actual assessment itself. So think of me as a tutor for a really good exam, okay? I'm here to help you through the process. I'm not going to do your homework for you.
Thank you, Michael. So the Cyber Essentials certification itself costs £300, as Michael said during the presentation. So that's the main cost in terms of going through it at the moment during this funded support programme. David's also asking, after the first year, what's the annual cost? So it would be the £300 would be your certification renewal. Obviously, you know, there would be discussions with your existing IT support, if you have that, about how to keep up this level of security once you get to that base layer over the year, just to make sure that you've got, you know, as we would say, secure by design, that everything that you do on a day-to-day basis just works securely, rather than, you know, making changes just to get through Cyber Essentials. Great, we don't have any other questions in the chat at the moment. Thank you for those that asked questions. Daniel, thank you for your nice comment there as well, who said thank you for setting up the partnership with Lugo to ICAS. So thank you for that. Thank you, Lynn, as well. So Michael, I'll just let you finish off. We've got a few more slides to go through because we have a very important announcement to make, so please don't leave just yet.
Yes, onto the important announcement. Yes, so we've done the Q&A for the audience there, but we have a fabulous roadshow that we're running this year. So in November, from the 15th to the 19th, I'll be touring around Scotland to offer a more in-depth discussion of how we'll actually implement these technical controls. And I'll also be there to basically help people work through their first ever version of the IASME questionnaire for Cyber Essentials. So there'll be a repertoire of things that we'll be getting on with during that roadshow. It'll be in the morning as well, from around about 9:30 till 12. There'll be free tea, coffee, breakfast rolls at the start of the event. And please pop in so you can learn how we can help you sort your cyber out. And if you scan that QR code or visit the website, that's Lugo IT Funded Cyber Support, you'll be able to register there. And this scan link actually takes you to our Eventbrite page. We'll also be sending these links out in the email afterwards, just to make sure you're aware. But please pop down. We've got some fabulous venues planned and some really good stuff to get through. So please come along and visit me on the dates on the screen. Okay. Thank you so much for your time today. Big shout out to those guest speakers who really added some great value to the conversation on Cyber Essentials there. And again, thank you to everyone who submitted their questions. It's good to know that people are actually interested in this and we're able to help you figure out the best way that you can secure your company. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for attending, and hopefully I'll see you guys at the roadshow. Take care and be safe.